The execution broadcast flooded every screen across the known galaxy. The transmission cut through civilian entertainment feeds, military command centers, and even the encrypted channels of Earth's highest authorities. No one could turn it off. No one could look away. 70,000 human prisoners, lined up in precise formations on a desolate alien world, knelt in the dust beneath a sky choked with industrial smog. Towering alien figures loomed over them, armored in dark metal, their elongated helmets hiding emotionless faces. The Galactic Empire's executioners moved in synchronized motion, rifles humming as they powered up. A voice, smooth yet devoid of warmth, spoke over the transmission. The price of rebellion is absolute. The punishment is death. General Marcus Caldwell watched from a war room deep within Earth's defense headquarters. His jaw tightened as the first row of prisoners collapsed, vaporized by a coordinated barrage of plasma fire. He had seen war. He had led men into battles he never wished to remember. But this was different. This was not war. It was a message. Beside him, President Eleanor Winters remained eerily silent. Her fingers curled into a fist on the polished steel table, the only outward sign of emotion. Around them, high-ranking officials, intelligence officers, and military strategists exchanged glances filled with barely contained fury. 70,000, someone whispered. All at once. Not all at once, Caldwell growled. Row by row. Precise. Calculated. Executed like animals. Winters exhaled sharply. They want us to be afraid. They want us to know resistance is hopeless. Admiral Hayes, a seasoned strategist with silver hair and cold blue eyes, shook his head. No, Madam President. They want us to kneel. The feed continued. A human, likely a captured officer, was dragged forward. His uniform was torn, but his posture remained rigid. Blood streaked his face, yet his eyes burned with defiance. The camera zoomed in as one of the executioners raised a sleek, curved energy blade to his throat. The moment before the strike, the man's voice rang out, clear and unshaken. We are not afraid. Earth will come for you. Then a flash of light. The transmission cut out. Silence filled the war room. The air seemed heavier, pressing down on everyone like an invisible force. The Galactic Empire had spoken. Now, it was Earth's turn. Winters turned to Caldwell. How long until our fleets are combat ready? Caldwell met her gaze without hesitation. They're ready now. The Empire's justification came swiftly, as expected. The Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Empire, an unervingly serene being with shimmering violet skin and multiple pupil-less eyes, appeared on the interstellar news networks shortly after the execution. In the polished, diplomatic tone of a species that had ruled the stars for millennia, he explained that the humans executed had been terrorists, insurgents who had threatened the stability of the Empire. He spoke of peace, of order, of necessary measures. They refused integration, he said, his elongated fingers steepled before him. Their deaths ensure harmony. The Earth government will understand, in time, that submission is the path to survival. On Earth, there was no harmony. There was only outrage. Riots erupted across major cities. Protesters flooded the streets, holding banners demanding retribution. Soldiers in barracks and on bases watched the execution footage in silence, their fists clenched. Across the solar system, human colonies and outposts bristled with tension, waiting for an answer from their leaders. The answer came within hours. Winters addressed the world from the heart of the United Nations headquarters. Dressed in stark black, her face was grim, her voice unwavering. The image of the fallen officer still burned in her mind, his last words an unspoken command. For too long, we have believed peace could be negotiated, she began. For too long, we have tolerated the yoke of the Galactic Empire, thinking that patience and diplomacy would spare us from their cruelty. Today, they have shown us the truth. They do not seek coexistence. They seek obedience. And when we refuse, they slaughter us like cattle. The streets fell silent. In homes, in military bases, in underground resistance cells on occupied human worlds, people leaned forward, hanging onto every word. We will not be cattle. We will not kneel. And we will not forget the 70,000 lives extinguished as a spectacle for the galaxy to witness. A pause. Then, the words that would change history. We are at war. The war rooms of Earth erupted into motion. The U.S. Marines, the vanguard of humanity's military might, received their orders. Mobilization for immediate deployment. Across the system, warships powered up, their engines roaring to life. Sleeper agents embedded within the Empire sent encrypted transmissions, their messages lighting up intelligence networks. Battle plans were drawn. Strike teams were selected. Caldwell stood before his assembled troops, his voice cutting through the low hum of machinery and preparations. They believe humanity is weak, that we lack the will to fight. They think fear will make us hesitate. His eyes swept across the soldiers before him, each one battle-hardened, each one prepared to give their lives for Earth. They are wrong. Nearby, a young Marine tightened his grip on his rifle. He had never fought in space before, never faced an enemy that viewed his entire species as expendable. But he had seen the footage. He had heard the officer's final words, "Earth will come for you." And he knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that they would. As warships began their journey into the cold abyss of space, the galaxy watched. The Empire had set the stage for fear and submission. Instead, they had forged something far deadlier. Humanity's wrath. Night draped the valley in heavy shadows, the pale glow of a waning moon barely piercing through the thick canopy of clouds. A biting wind swept across the ridgeline, carrying with it the scent of scorched earth and the distant metallic tang of war. The air was taut, electric with anticipation, the kind that crept beneath the skin and set every nerve on edge. Commander Elias Draven stood at the precipice, his sharp gaze fixed on the enemy encampment sprawled like a malignant scar across the landscape below. Rows of armored vehicles gleamed faintly in the dim light, their hulking forms guarded by a sea of soldiers moving with mechanical precision. Searchlights carved through the darkness, slicing across terrain littered with debris and shattered remnants of a once thriving settlement. Draven's jaw clenched. There was no turning back now. Behind him, the elite strike force, known as Shadow Company, awaited his signal. Clad in matte black combat suits designed for stealth and agility, they blended seamlessly with the night. Each operative bore the scars of countless battles, their faces hardened by loss and forged by resolve. Among them was Captain Mira Holt, a sharpshooter with eyes as cold and unyielding as winter frost, and Sergeant Leo Vargas, whose bullish strength was matched only by his fierce loyalty to his comrades. "We've got one shot at this," Draven said, his voice low but commanding. "Hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they even know what's happening." Myra's lips curved into a wry smile. "Just another day at the office." "Huh, Commander?" Draven allowed himself a fleeting smirk. "Something like that." Vargas hefted his massive assault rifle, the weapon looking almost diminutive in his grip. "What's the target, sir?" Draven's expression turned grim. "Their communication hub. Take it out, and we sever their ability to coordinate reinforcements. It'll give our forces the edge they need to push through the Eastern Front." A murmur of assent rippled through the team. They all knew the stakes. Operation Retribution wasn't just about reclaiming lost territory. It was about survival. The enemy's relentless advance had left entire regions in ruins, their citizens either enslaved or slaughtered. This mission was a desperate gambit to turn the tide of war. Draven signaled with a sharp hand gesture, and the team moved out, descending the rocky slope with practiced ease. The terrain was treacherous, strewn with loose stones and jagged outcroppings, but Shadow Company navigated it with the fluidity of predators stalking their prey. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. They reached the outskirts of the enemy camp undetected, concealed by the natural contours of the land. Draven raised a fist, and the team froze, sinking into the shadows. The hum of generators and the distant clatter of boots on metal echoed through the night. Mira activated her visor's thermal overlay, scanning the perimeter. 2 guards by the main entrance, another patrol circling every 3 minutes. Automated turrets at the corners. "I'll handle the patrol," Vargas rumbled. Quietly, Draven nodded. Mira, take out the turrets. The rest of us will breach the entrance once they're down. The sharpshooter slipped into position, her movements smooth and deliberate. With practiced efficiency, she lined up her shots and fired, each silenced round finding its mark. Sparks erupted from the turrets as they powered down, their ominous hum fading into silence. Meanwhile, Vargas crept up behind the patrolling guards, his massive form surprisingly stealthy. In swift, brutal motions, he incapacitated them, lowering their unconscious bodies to the ground without a sound. Draven led the remaining operatives to the entrance, planting a charge on the reinforced gate. Stand back, he ordered. A controlled detonation blew the gate inward, the muted blast masked by the roar of a passing transport vehicle. Shadow Company surged forward, weapons at the ready. They moved through the labyrinthine corridors with lethal precision, neutralizing any resistance they encountered. The communication hub was a hive of activity, technicians scrambling to maintain the flow of information critical to the enemy's war effort. Draven's team burst into the room, gunfire cutting down the opposition before they could raise the alarm. Clear, Mira called out, her rifle still trained on the doorway. Draven approached the central console, inserting a data spike to upload the virus that would cripple the enemy's network. The device hummed to life, its display flashing with lines of code. We're in, Draven said. Hold the perimeter. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the virus infiltrated the system. Alarms blared throughout the facility, red lights casting ominous shadows on the walls. We've got company, Vargas warned, his voice tense. Enemy reinforcements poured into the corridor, their weapons blazing. Shadow Company returned fire, the confined space amplifying the cacophony of battle. Myra's shots were precise, each one finding its target with deadly accuracy. Vargas held the line, his sheer presence a bulwark against the advancing tide. Almost there, Draven muttered, willing the upload to complete. A sudden explosion rocked the facility, smoke and debris filling the air. Draven shielded his face, coughing as he assessed the situation. The structural integrity of the building was compromised. They had to move. We're done here, he declared. Fall back. Shadow Company fought their way back through the maze of corridors, every step a struggle against the chaos unfolding around them. The night was alive with fire and fury, but they pressed on, driven by the unyielding determination to see their mission through. They emerged into the open air, the cool night a stark contrast to the inferno they had left behind. The enemy camp was in disarray, soldiers scrambling to contain the breach. Draven led his team to the extraction point, where a stealth transport awaited. As they lifted off, the camp below erupted in a series of secondary explosions, the virus triggering catastrophic failures across the network. Draven watched in grim satisfaction as the enemy's stronghold crumbled. Mira exhaled sharply, a rare expression of relief crossing her features. We did it. For now, Draven said, his tone tempered by the weight of what lay ahead. This was just the beginning. The transport soared into the night, carrying Shadow Company toward their next battle. The war was far from over, but tonight they had struck a decisive blow, one that would echo across the battlefield and reignite the spark of hope. In the icy desolation of Hoth, the Rebel Alliance clung to survival like frostbitten fingers grasping the edge of a precipice. Beneath the shadow of towering white peaks and amidst endless fields of snow, their hidden base thrummed with tenuous life. Strategists, technicians, and soldiers moved briskly through ice-carved corridors, their breath visible in the freezing air. Every step echoed determination tempered by desperation, for they knew the Empire would never relent in its pursuit. Luke Skywalker stood at the threshold of a cavernous hangar, the bitter wind slicing through his thick, rebel-issued parka. His eyes, sharp with a mixture of resolve and lingering doubt, scanned the horizon beyond the protective shield generator. The young pilot had matured since the destruction of the Death Star, but a weight now settled on his shoulders, the burden of expectation and the elusive whispers of destiny. Nearby, Han Solo strode toward the Millennium Falcon, his ever-present swagger undiminished by the cold. The Corellian smuggler had a knack for finding levity even under the bleakest circumstances. "Chewie, start warming up the engines," Han called out as the towering Wookiee growled in response from atop the ship's hull, fur-rimed with frost. The Falcon, battered but resilient, mirrored its captain, a defiant relic in a galaxy that demanded conformity. Leia Organa emerged from the command center, her breath misting in the frigid air. Though wrapped in layers against the cold, there was no shielding her regal presence or the fierce determination burning in her eyes. The princess carried the weight of leadership with a grace honed by loss and relentless duty. Her sharp gaze caught sight of Han, and she marched toward him with purposeful strides. "Solo," Leia called, her tone brisk but tinged with exasperation. "Are you really leaving now? We need every capable pilot." Han tilted his head, a smirk playing on his lips. "Relax, your worship. I'll be back. Just gotta settle some old debts before Jabba sends a welcoming committee." Leia's expression hardened. "This isn't about you, Han. The Empire's closing in. We don't have the luxury of selfish pursuits." Han's smirk faltered for a moment, but he recovered quickly, masking any trace of vulnerability. "You care more than you let on," he quipped, voice light but edged with sincerity. Before Leia could respond, a blaring alarm shattered the icy stillness. Red warning lights pulsed throughout the base as soldiers rushed to defensive positions. The deep, mechanical voice of the base commander echoed through the comms. "Imperial forces inbound. All personnel to battle stations." Luke's heart raced. The foreboding he'd felt during restless nights had materialized. The Empire had found them. Snow speeder pilots scrambled to their ships as towering AT-AT walkers lumbered ominously across the horizon, their hulking forms barely visible against the blinding white expanse. The ground trembled with each calculated step of the mechanical behemoths. Blaster fire erupted, bright crimson bolts streaking through the icy air. Luke sprinted to his speeder, adrenaline sharpening his senses. "Dak, you ready?" he called to his gunner as he climbed into the cockpit. Dak Rolter, young and eager despite the odds, flashed a determined grin. "Right behind you, Commander. Let's take these bucketheads down." As the speeder lifted off, Luke gritted his teeth, the weight of command pressing heavily upon him. The frigid landscape blurred beneath them as they soared toward the advancing walkers. The battle was a symphony of chaos. Explosions reverberated through the air, smoke mingling with swirling snow. Han and Chewbacca raced toward the Falcon, blaster fire peppering the hangar as stormtroopers breached the perimeter. Han cursed under his breath, returning fire with practiced precision. "Chewie, get her ready to fly, or we're going to be permanent residents of this ice cube." The Wookiee's growl was both acknowledgement and admonishment as he disappeared into the ship. Leia, refusing to be a passive spectator, directed troops with commanding authority. "Fall back to defensive positions," she ordered. "We hold them here as long as possible." Her voice cut through the chaos, a beacon of resolve. Despite the onslaught, hope flickered in the rebels' hearts, fueled by defiance and the bond forged through shared struggle. But even hope had its limits. An explosion rocked the base, sending shards of ice cascading from the ceiling. Luke's speeders spiraled out of control, warning alarms blaring. He fought the controls, heart pounding, as they hurtled toward the ground. With a desperate yank on the yoke, he managed to level the craft just before impact. Breathless but unshaken, he surveyed the battlefield. The walkers advanced relentlessly, their armor impervious to conventional blaster fire. Dak's voice crackled over the comms. "What now, Commander?" Luke's jaw clenched. "We go for the legs. Trip them up." The next moments were a blur of daring maneuvers and precise coordination. Luke guided his speeder beneath the towering walker, the tow cable unfurling behind them. "Steady," he instructed, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Dak fired the harpoon, the cable wrapping around the walker's legs. The mechanical giant teetered, its balance compromised. With a deafening crash, it collapsed onto the frozen ground. A surge of triumph swept through Luke, but it was short-lived. The battle was far from over, and the price of freedom continued to rise. Back at the base, Han and Leia faced their own gauntlet. "We can't hold them forever," Han warned, firing another shot that sent a stormtrooper sprawling. Leia's lips pressed into a grim line. "We just need to hold long enough for the transports to escape." Han nodded, grudging respect flickering in his eyes. "You're a hell of a leader, Princess." Leia didn't waver. "And you're a scoundrel, but I'll take what I can get." As the last transport lifted off, the realization settled over them. They had bought time, nothing more. The Empire's wrath would not be sated by a single battle. Han gestured toward the Falcon. "Come on, Your Highness. Time to make our exit." Leia hesitated only a fraction of a second before following. Together, they raced aboard the ship as Chewbacca roared from the cockpit. The engines roared to life, and the Falcon lifted off amid a hail of blaster fire. As the icy landscape receded beneath them, Leia allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. They had survived barely, but survival was not enough. The fight against tyranny demanded more than endurance. It required unyielding resolve. Luke, still in the thick of the battle, watched the Falcon disappear into the sky. Determination hardened in his chest. This was only the beginning. The Empire's grip on the galaxy remained strong, but so too did the flame of rebellion. And Luke Skywalker would see that flame burn brighter than ever. As dawn stretched its pale fingers across the charred horizon, the echoes of war clung stubbornly to the air. Smoke spiraled upward in defiant plumes, remnants of a fierce battle that had seared scars into both land and soul. Amid the ruins of what had once been a bustling city, a group of survivors gathered in the shadow of a half-collapsed building, their breath shallow but steady, proof that life, however fragile, still pulsed. Elias Gray stood at the edge of the group, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. His dark hair was matted with ash and sweat, clinging to a face hardened by loss but tempered by resolve. A jagged scar traced the line of his jaw, a grim souvenir from one of countless skirmishes against the machines that had sought to exterminate humanity. Beside him, Mira Patel adjusted the strap of her makeshift rifle, her fingers nimble despite the grime that caked her skin. Myra's gaze was unwavering, her determination a beacon in the grim wasteland. "We can't stay here," Elias said, his voice low but commanding. "They'll be back." Mira nodded. The tunnels beneath the old metro station might still be intact. "We can regroup there." Her words carried a faint accent, a lingering echo of a world that no longer existed. From the back of the group, a young man named Finn shifted nervously. His curly hair was singed at the tips, and his wide eyes darted between the ruins, as if expecting an ambush at any moment. "Are you sure it's safe? What if the machines have already mapped it out?" "Then we'll find another way," Elias said firmly. "But right now, we need cover." The survivors moved quickly, their footsteps muffled by the ash-covered ground. The city, once a sprawling testament to human ingenuity, was now a skeletal ruin, its skyscrapers reduced to jagged teeth jutting toward a sky stained with smoke. Each step was a reminder of the cost of resistance, but also of the unyielding will to fight. As they approached the entrance to the metro, a faint hum reverberated through the air, the unmistakable sound of a drone patrol. Elias raised a clenched fist, signaling the group to halt. They pressed themselves against the crumbling walls, hearts pounding in unison. "Stay quiet," Mira whispered, her grip tightening on her rifle. The drone appeared over the ridge, its sleek, metallic body glinting ominously in the dim light. Red sensors scanned the area, searching for any signs of human life. Time stretched taut as the survivors held their breath, willing themselves to become invisible. Elias's mind raced. He knew the capabilities of these machines, their ruthless efficiency, their unrelenting pursuit. The drone hovered for a moment longer before veering off, disappearing into the smoke-laden sky. Only then did the group exhale, tension easing from their bodies like steam. "That was too close," Finn muttered, his voice shaking. "Close is better than dead," Mira retorted, though her own relief was palpable. They descended into the metro station, the air growing cooler and damp with each step. The flicker of emergency lights cast eerie shadows along the graffitied walls. Debris littered the platform, abandoned luggage, shattered glass, remnants of a past life frozen in chaos. Elias took point, his senses sharp. Keep an eye out. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's safe. The group navigated through the maze of tunnels, their path illuminated by dim beams from handheld lanterns. The further they ventured, the more the oppressive weight of the surface seemed to lift, replaced by a grim determination. This was their reality now, a world where survival demanded constant vigilance and relentless courage. They reached a cavernous chamber where remnants of an old resistance hideout lay dormant. Metal crates were stacked haphazardly, and faded maps adorned the walls, marked with strategic points and routes long abandoned. "We'll rest here for a bit," Elias announced. "But not for long. We need to keep moving." Mira began inspecting the crates, her practiced movements revealing a cache of supplies, ammunition, medical kits, and rations. "Looks like whoever was here left in a hurry," she observed. "Or didn't get the chance to leave," Finn added grimly. Elias crouched beside a dusty console, his fingers tracing the edges of a cracked screen. Memories surged, of battles fought and comrades lost, of moments when victory seemed within grasp only to be snatched away by the cold, unfeeling machines. But those memories were tempered by one undeniable truth. They were still here. And as long as they were alive, there was hope. "We need to contact the other cells," Elias said, breaking the silence. "If we're going to push back, we can't do it alone." Mira nodded. "Agreed. But first, we need to secure this place and make sure it's defensible." As they set to work fortifying their position, a sense of purpose infused the air. Finn, despite his initial fear, proved resourceful, rigging makeshift traps along the entrance points. Myra's tactical acumen ensured that every angle was covered, every vulnerability addressed. Hours passed, marked only by the distant rumble of unseen threats. The chamber, once a desolate relic, now bore the signs of burgeoning resistance, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refused to surrender. Elias stood at the center of it all, his presence a steady anchor. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but he also knew they were ready. They had to be. "This isn't just about survival," he said, his voice carrying the weight of conviction. "It's about taking back what's ours. For every life they've taken, for every city they've razed, we will rise." The survivors looked to him, their faces illuminated by the flickering lantern light. In their eyes, he saw not just fear, but resolve, the spark of defiance that no machine could extinguish. Mira stepped forward, her expression fierce. "Then let's make them regret ever thinking they could break us." A murmur of agreement swept through the group, growing stronger with each voice that joined. They were few, battered and bruised, but they were not defeated. As the echoes of their resolve faded into the depths of the tunnels, one thing became clear. This was the beginning of something greater. A spark that would ignite a revolution, a defiant stand against annihilation. And for the first time in a long while, hope flickered like a flame refusing to be snuffed out.